It is official. Today we are talking through my top 10 running backs after the NFL Combine, and it's exciting because we saw all we needed to see. We thought this 2025 class was going to be super deep, it was going to be super talented, and boy did they show out at the NFL Combine. When we start off with my player number 1, we're going to be talking about Ashton Jeanty, and this is going to be really a long consensus. We don't have to talk about it too long, but Ashton Jeanty comes out, puts up the Heisman campaign for Boise State, and I think when you're talking about a guy that is for sure going to be getting round 1 draft capital, there's no reason for us not to be putting him here. But I do think there is a little bit of range where maybe Ashton Jeanty doesn't come off the board as the RB1. But even so, with his production profile that he had at Boise State, where we're looking at him this last year, 2,600 yards, 30 total touchdowns, 23 receptions, 138 receiving yards. And then you pull up Addison's markers and you see that Ashton Jeanty hits all the markers that you could want. Hit 8 total markers in this 2025 season. Absolutely elite level traits out of a guy like Ashton Jeanty. We don't need to hit on him anymore, but definitely love him still, of course, as my RB1 heading into the 2025 draft class. And while we're here, if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button as we are putting out more and more Dynasty content each and every day, each and every week over here at DLF. Moving on to my player number 2, it's going to be Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. And while Jeanty was playing it safe by not participating in any drills and not running the 40-yard dash, Omarion Hampton just went out there and says, hey guys, it's me. I'm going for the crown. And he absolutely went out and produced at the level that we thought Omarion Hampton was going to produce. And not only did that help his overall draft stock, I think the tier that we have between Jeanty and Omarion Hampton, we now look at it and we say, hey, it's a little bit closer than what we were thinking, where Omarion Hampton comes out, runs a 4.46 40-yard dash. He has speed score in the 94th percentile of around 111.7, 96th percentile burst score at 129.6. As much as maybe the 40-yard dash time wasn't as much as some other speedsters, some smaller end running backs, this guy had a great speed score for a guy that's 6 foot, 221 pounds. So as we look at Omarion Hampton as the RB2, I understand we have Ashton Jeanty at the top, but Omarion Hampton sliding in as my RB2, I feel really great about. He's probably going to be getting round 1 draft capital, and it kind of reminds me of the similar situation between Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor from a few years ago, where both these guys were both projected to be first-round picks. Of course, Jonathan Taylor fell to the second round, but I do think Omarion Hampton solidified himself as that first-round running back after the NFL Draft Combine. Now, this is kind of where everyone starts to look at things a little bit differently, and my RB3 in the class is going to be Quinshon Judkins out of Ohio State University. And you guys see the banners behind me. And as we talk more and more, I am an Ohio State Buckeye fan. And so you're going to say to me, Kaleb, why are you picking Quinshon Judkins over a guy like TreVeyon Henderson? My main thing that I like about Quinshon Judkins not only is the height, 6 foot, 221, but also the college production that he was able to have at Ole Miss before coming to Ohio State and splitting carries with TreVeyon Henderson. He ran a 4.48 40-yard dash time, puts him in the 81th percentile on the 40-yard dash. He has a speed score of 109.7, puts him in the 91st percentile, and then he had a burst score of 131.5%. Now, when we look at him over on the marker system, Quinshon Judkins this year only hit 6 total markers on Addison's system. And now, like we said, the adjusted markers, Addison takes into account a ton of that overall season. And so when we're looking at Quinshon Judkins and maybe why he didn't hit as many markers as a guy like an Ashton Jeanty, an Omarion Hampton in 2025, the main reason is he was splitting a backfield with TreVeyon Henderson. He was also playing in an offense that was super prolific passing the ball with Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith, and Carnell Tate. And so I'm not saying all of that to say, oh, we got to discount Quinshon Judkins and you're discounting the situation of some of the other guys. I'm just saying he was playing in an absolutely loaded offense. And he still rushed the ball 194 times, 1,000 yards, 16 total touchdowns, 22 receptions, and 161 receiving yards. I love me some Quinshon Judkins. I think Quinshon Judkins has shown in his career to be super durable. And I think the move of getting almost 75 to 80 less carries by transferring to Ohio State this year and playing in almost 3 more games was more to save himself for his NFL career than it was to absolutely dominate in year 3 in college. And so when I'm looking at his overall projection, I think Quinshon Judkins is going to be a 2nd-round pick, if not a 3rd-round pick And that's someone that when we're looking at the production profile, of course, if some of these guys behind him get higher draft capital, I'll probably lean that way. But I think Quinshon Judkins is built in such a way that he can be an elite level running back. I love me some Quinshon Judkins. Now, moving on to my RB4, though, it is going to be his running mate at Ohio State. It's going to be TreVeyon Henderson. And TreVeyon Henderson, I thought he was going to maybe run a little bit faster before. He ran a 4.43, which puts him in the 92nd percentile. I just think TreVeyon Henderson fits that 3-down Jahmyr Gibbs level type running back. I'm not saying TreVeyon Henderson is the same prospect. Hear me out. I'm not saying that. I think TreVeyon Henderson's definitely going to be getting that second round draft capital, if not third round draft capital. He's really great out of the backfield, has really great hands. I mean, when we were talking about this class, the 2025 class, we didn't even think TreVeyon Henderson was going to be in it because a lot of people thought he was going to come out after a junior, but he goes back to Ohio State, of course, wins that national championship, but this year had only 144 rushing attempts, 1,000 yards, 11 total touchdowns, 27 receptions for 284 yards. But if anyone watched the games, he was able to really stay healthy this year because him and Quinshon Judkins were splitting the load. I do think TreVeyon Henderson, still, I feel very good with him sliding in as my RB4. We know he's got the block and we know he has the hands, and we do know he has that top-end speed that is going to make him super appealing to a lot of NFL franchises. So I do like him here as my RB4. I think this is kind of the area, like we said, the top two are definitely locked and loaded as the top two. I think going forward into these next three that we're talking about, there's kind of some room and you need your own flavor of running back. So let me know down below, who do you have as your RB3? Who do you have as your RB4? Would love to know. Now we move on to my RB5, and it's going to be Kaleb Johnson out of Iowa. And Kaleb Johnson had maybe one of the most disappointing combines out of everyone, running a 4.57 40-yard dash, put him in the 56th percentile, and had a speed score of 102.7, put him in the 73rd percentile. Now, 6'1", 224. I would like to reiterate what I said earlier. We've seen running backs that didn't perform super great at the combine, a la a Kyron Williams, a la a Bucky Irving, who then get into the NFL and they absolutely produce. Because like we said, a lot of these metrics, whether we're talking through athleticism or whether we're talking through a 40-yard dash, they don't necessarily apply to a running back all the time, because the running back, they're getting the ball and they have about 3 yards to get to the line of scrimmage, and they're getting met, having to break tackles, having to have vision. So there's a lot more to the running back position than just being super fast. And so I want to address and acknowledge that. But when we're looking at Kaleb Johnson, I actually saw him play twice this last year. I was at the Ohio State versus Iowa game. Then I saw Iowa versus Michigan State. And I think the biggest concern that I had with Kaleb Johnson in those games personally was just how bad the Iowa offense was. And so the boxes were super stacked. So a lot of times his average yards per carry was a lot higher because he did have a ton of breakaway runs. I understand Kaleb Johnson. A lot of people are going to say, Caleb, you're a homer. Kaleb Johnson should still be RB3 ahead of Quinshon Judkins, ahead of TreVeyon Henderson. I just think that if Quinshon Judkins or TreVeyon Henderson got the volume that Kaleb Johnson did this last year, we would be very much so not only putting them ahead of Kaleb Johnson, but we'd be putting them closer to that RB2 overall conversation. But Kaleb Johnson, with the lack of athleticism that we saw in regards to the NFL draft combine, has me a little bit worried. I mean, 1.62, 10-yard. His top speedy hit was 22.2. Max acceleration, 5.54. I can't necessarily put Kaleb Johnson ahead of TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, but I do have them in the same tier. So if anyone's over here like, Caleb, you're over here divulging, talking through Kaleb Johnson, I disagree with you. That's allowed. I just think I have Kaleb Johnson in that top 5. And so really for me, if we had tiers, it'd be Jeanty, Hampton, kind of big tier, Judkins, Henderson, Kaleb Johnson to round out my top 5. Now, moving on to my RB6, it's going to be DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. And DJ Giddens, not only does he have amazing hair, 6 foot, 212, he had a 4.43 40-yard dash, 92nd percentile, 110 speed score, 91st percentile, and then a 132.2 burst score, which we absolutely love to see out of DJ Giddens. And this is kind of where, after those top 5 guys, I don't know, like DJ Giddens could go anywhere from round 3 to round 4, round 5. And so I think a lot of times with how deep this class is, we're going to have to see where these guys land. And so DJ Giddens sliding in as my overall RB6. My RB7 is going to be Damien Martinez out of the University of Miami. And I was a little bit higher on Damien Martinez, especially in my Devy leagues that I do play in. 6 foot, 217 pounds, runs a 4.51 40-yard dash, puts him in the 80th percentile for speed score with 104.9, 66th percentile burst score. So the burst was not as good as what I was hoping for. So Damien Martinez is another guy that, kind of as we're talking about it, a lot of these guys are going to be determined by draft capital. Like I said, the top 5, I feel like these next 8 guys are kind of in a tier. And we're not even going to talk about all 8 because there's a lot of guys that aren't going to make this list. And a lot of y'all are going to be upset with me. And that's totally fine. I think I like to evaluate a lot of these running backs. These are my ideas of them as prospects. And then I like to reevaluate with the NFL draft capital before we do our actual dynasty rookie draft. So move on to my RB8. And it's going to be Bhayshul Tuten, Virginia Tech running back, 22 years old, 5'9", 206. So a little bit smaller. We've been talking about a lot of bigger size running backs. 4.32 40-yard dash time, 118.3 speed score, 133.9 97th percentile burst score. Dude is absolutely electric. And when we start to talk about, hey, what's a guy that compares to this guy? It's literally Chris Johnson, it's Devon A. Chain, but there's been hundreds of other running backs that have not produced at any sort of fantasy football level. So as I look at him, I think he definitely made his way up the draft board. Now, there's going to be a ton of people that you're going to see in the space that are going to say, this dude is like Kaleb said, my RB8. You're going to see other people in the space that say, this guy is my RB14. This is because the class is so deep. So if you have seconds, if you have early thirds, make sure you're holding on to those bad boys, because pretty much all those running backs, they're going to be in the same tier. A lot of it's going to be determined by draft capital, but a lot of these guys are going to give their shots. A lot of people are going to be able to see who and why they should be reloading with these guys. And so I think it makes, as much as this class might not be prototypical for having quarterbacks and wide receivers that make it a strong class, I think a lot of your later picks might have a little bit of extra value because there will be some better dart throws at the running back position. Loved what he was able to do at Virginia Tech and had a ton of markers here for Addison. He actually hit 9 total markers. So I just think this guy is a great sleeper candidate. Think you definitely need to be taking a shot on him when we're talking my overall RB8 in the class. We move on to my RB9, and it's going to be Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. And Ollie Gordon was somebody that, when we were talking about this class last year at this time, or even early into the summer before the incident happened, Ollie Gordon was discussed and mentioned in the same breath as the TreVeyon Hendersons, the Quinshon Judkins. He was a top 3 or top 4 running back prospect in this class. And what we ended up seeing happen is Ollie Gordon having a little bit of a down year at Oklahoma State. And we see him come into the draft 6'1", 226. So he's a little bit bigger of a running back than I was thinking. I was thinking he's probably going to be like 5'11", 6 foot, but he is 6'1", 4.61 40-yard dash, puts him in the 42nd percentile, which isn't ideal. 100.1 speed score puts him in the 66th percentile, and then 118.7 burst score puts him in the 49th percentile. And this is going to be one of the guys where, yes, his athletic measurables did not blow us away. But I do really like him as a prospect. I think he showed a lot as a sophomore. I think his junior year had just a lot going on for him personally. And now I'm not trying to make excuses for Ollie Gordon, but I remember seeing the talent. We saw the talent as a sophomore with this guy being an absolutely electric level running back. I am really excited for Ollie Gordon wherever he lands. I think there's just a lot of juice to be squeezed with Ollie Gordon. So I definitely want to take a shot at him. Like I said, he reminds me, I feel like Rachaad White is like who Ollie Gordon reminds me of. And we've seen Rachaad White, even though Bucky Irving overtook him this last year, have a ton of fantasy football success. And I think Ollie Gordon, if he lands in the right situation, 100% could be a guy like Rachaad White. Now, moving on to my RB10 and Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State. And when we're looking at Mr. Cam, he did not test at the NFL Draft Combine. So the big worry that a lot of people had is, hey, how fast is Cam Skattebo? Because it's reported, it's out there that there's a 40 time somewhere around a 4.65. Now, is that true? Is that not true? Because a lot of people are like, he might be Peyton Hillis. He might be Toby Gerhart. We don't know. Or he could be a little bit faster than that. But since we didn't see him test, a lot of people are worried about Mr. Cam because he did have a really good year this last year at Arizona State, looking like a potential Heisman finalist. Comes out, 293 rushing attempts, 1,700 yards, 24 total touchdowns. Cam is 23 years old. So not that we like to start already age tracking these running backs as they come into the NFL, but dude's already 23, a little bit older of a prospect, 5'10", 219. And a lot of people are worried about that overall lawn speed. Now, like we said, we didn't get to see him test, so I can't see his 10-yard versus his 40 or anything like that. But I do just like to say that I think I have to add him here. I mean, there was other guys like a Dylan Sampson, someone like a Devin Neal that I was kind of debating, but the overall production profile of college that Cam Skattebo put up compared to those guys and the overall heart that he showed in the college football playoffs, I mean, I gave him a little bit of bonus points for that. But the question is, how fast is Cam Skattebo, and how is that overall going to affect his overall NFL draft capital? Because at the end of the day, guys, all these guys, it's very possible that a guy like a Dylan Sampson could jump all the way up to my RB6 based on draft capital over a guy like a DJ Giddens. I just think there's a lot of questions still to be had. This class is super deep, so make sure you're holding on to those seconds. Make sure you're holding on to those thirds. But if you like Dynasty Fantasy Football, hit that like and subscribe button. Appreciate all y'all for checking this video out. We will be putting out more videos on the channel with Addison, with Justin, and of course, myself included. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.